In this first dish, this is cod with peas and coconut, nori, and a carrot dashi. What we're going to do is a fairly basic application of meat glue. In this case, we're going to take a side of cod, and as you can see, fish, meat, most animals in general are not sort of uniformly shaped, and the flesh is thicker near the collar, thinner near the tail, and traditionally in restaurants, that disparity in size is a problem, and you end up with waste, or you have to repurpose things or not be able to use it. But in this case, what we're going to be able to do is we're going to strip the cod, we're going to brush it with our slurry so it's nice and evenly coated, and then we're going to reshape it into a cylinder that makes it uniform from end to end and eliminates all waste, allows us to control portion size, cooking times, cooking temperatures, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the meats, the flesh, the fish, has all been nicely and evenly stripped, and now we take that slurry and we brush it on the fish.
What's unique about this slurry itself is that while this is transglutaminase, this is this particular grade that actually incorporates some phosphate salts. And what phosphate salts have the tendency to do, in this case, is raise the pH. We discussed enzymes and the various environmental conditions that govern their behavior. Each enzyme has a particular range in which it's particularly active, where it can actually catalyze the reaction. At high pH ranges, in this case 8, 9, transglutaminase is not particularly active. So in that slurry that we see being brushed on, that slurry itself is not particularly active. However, as that slurry hits the surface of the meat, the buffering salt does not have that high buffering capacity, and the pH is dropped. In that case, the enzyme begins to have its activity. Once it's hit the meat, it's starting to glue. And we have to get the meat in contact with itself in order for those covalent bonds to actually be formed.
And so that you can see what we're doing now, again, it's been brushed, the reaction is beginning to take place. We have a limited window in which we can make a nice, clean bond. So we take that fish that's been stripped, brushed, and now we're going to roll it up. And what was once sort of a misshapen piece of fish is going to be a really nice, uniform piece of fish. Misshapen is maybe not the kindest thing to say about it, God's creation, but
but when you think about it from a culinary standpoint, and when we're in the kitchen, we're applying heat. The more uniform the object that we're heating, the better and more predictable we can tell when it's finished cooking.
And that's to the benefit of the diner too. Let's be clear about that. I mean, we're not just sort of playing God here and making a turducken. We're actually putting something in a very useful shape. There's zero waste here, and this is to the benefit of not only the restaurant, but the consumer as well, because we're going to be able to get something very consistent, very even, very uniform.
And it pays respect to the animal itself.
Because there's no waste.
There's no waste.
We're using its entirety. This is the entire side of cod. Now, what we're doing here is just piercing it a little bit to get some of those air pockets out. Again, the effectiveness of this bond is based on time and contact.
And contact, physical contact. So here they've been wrapped, it's been wrapped tightly. It's also, while it may seem that no time has elapsed, once that the cod is wrapped, it is then put under refrigeration for a minimum of 4 hours.
Ideally 3 to 6, well, minimally 3 to 6 hours, ideally overnight.
Overnight. So as you can see, when we're unraveling this or portioning this, no longer do we have disparate and separate pieces of cod. In this case, we actually have a uniform disc.
Yeah, we have
fillet.
A puck of cod, if you will, and each customer gets 2 of these. And you can see, again, it's nicely marbled in a way, very uniform, very easy to cook, very consistently. We're just going to take these and saute them the old-fashioned way. It's just classically cooked piece of fish in a pan, a little bit of butter.
And when you do look closer at them, you can certainly make out the different tranches or the different pieces of the cod that were glued or were covalently bonded together or glued together. But again, it's an interesting marbled effect.
It is, and it actually, I think, adds in a way to the sensory experience of the diner. You're eating something in a more unique fashion. In this case, again, it's a piece of cod, 2 pieces of cod sautéed, sits on top of a puree of peas and coconut, and then the 2 pieces of fish. On top of that are some carrots sautéed in butter. Then we make a pasta out of nori, and we drape it on top. And then that's a dashi broth made from carrot juice instead of the traditional water.
So it's a cod surprise.
It is underneath that cover.
Lovely drape.